The crystal chandeliers of the Nighthaven estate blazed with 1,000 candles, casting dancing shadows across the faces of immortals who had gathered for the Blood Moon Gala. Josephine stood frozen in the center of the grand ballroom, her simple servant's dress a stark contrast to the silks and velvets surrounding her, as every vampire in attendance turned to stare. Her heart hammered against her ribs so violently she thought it might tear through her chest. Lord Viktor Castellane, the vampire king of the Northern Coven, stood before her with cold disgust etched into his aristocratic features. His hand, which had caressed her cheek just hours before, now gestured toward her as if she were something contaminated. "Let everyone here witness what foolishness nearly befell me," Victor announced, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent ballroom. "I almost bound myself to this human." The word dripped from his lips like poison. Josephine's face burned with humiliation as hundreds of immortal eyes examined her, judged her, found her wanting. She had believed Victor when he whispered that her humanity didn't matter, that what they shared transcended the boundaries between mortal and immortal. She had been a fool. "You said you loved me," Josephine whispered, hating how her voice trembled. Victor's laugh cut through her like a blade. "Love? I was temporarily bewitched by curiosity, nothing more. Did you truly believe a vampire king would bind himself eternally to a creature who will wither and die in the blink of an eye?" He turned to address the crowd, spreading his arms wide. "She served my household well enough, I'll grant her that. But the moment she dared to dream above her station, to imagine herself worthy of standing at my side, she became insufferable." Tears burned behind Josephine's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here, not in front of them all. Her hands clenched into fists at her sides, nails digging into her palms. A silver-haired vampire woman in the crowd laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "Perhaps she bewitched you with some human trickery, Victor. They can be cunning, these mortals, when they want something." "You may be right, Lady Isadora," Victor mused, circling Josephine like a predator examining wounded prey. "Perhaps she should be tested. If she used forbidden arts to cloud my judgment, the punishment would be severe." Josephine's blood ran cold. Testing meant torture. It meant vampire inquisitors who could tear through a human mind like parchment, leaving nothing but screaming madness behind. "I used no magic. I have no magic. I'm just—" Her voice broke. "I'm just human." "Exactly," Victor said softly, and somehow that quiet cruelty was worse than his shouting. "Just human. Not worthy of remembering. Guards, escort this creature from my estate. She is dismissed from my service. Let her find her fortune in the streets where she belongs." 2 vampires in formal livery stepped forward, their grips on her arms like iron vices. They dragged her backward toward the doors, and Josephine's humiliation transformed into something sharper, something that tasted like fury on her tongue. "You'll regret this," she said, the words escaping before she could stop them. The ballroom erupted in laughter. Victor smiled, and it was the cruelest expression she had ever seen. "Will I? Tell me, little human, how exactly will you make a vampire king regret anything? Will you write a strongly worded letter? Will you spread gossip in the human quarters?" He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "You are nothing. You have always been nothing. The only mystery is why I ever thought otherwise." The guards hauled her through the marble corridors and threw her into the rain-soaked night. Josephine landed hard on the cobblestones, her palms scraping against the rough stone. The massive doors of the estate slammed shut behind her with a finality that echoed through her chest. She knelt there in the downpour, letting the rain mix with her tears, wondering how everything had fallen apart so completely. 3 months ago, Victor had found her working in the estate's kitchens. He had been charming, attentive, making her believe she was special, making her believe that the boundary between human and vampire could be crossed with enough feeling, enough connection. She had been such a fool. Josephine pushed herself to her feet, ignoring the sting of her scraped palms, and began walking. She had nowhere to go. Victor had been her employer, and servants, dismissed in disgrace, found no welcome elsewhere. The vampire nobles who ruled this city would hear of her presumption, her audacity to dream above her station. She would be unemployable, untouchable. The streets of Ashenmore twisted through the darkness like a labyrinth designed to swallow hope. Josephine walked without direction, her servant's dress growing heavy with rain, her hair plastered to a face. She didn't know how long she wandered before the voices found her. "Well, well, what do we have here?" 3 figures emerged from an alley, their eyes gleaming red in the darkness. Rogue vampires. The kind who fed on whoever they could catch rather than purchasing blood from willing donors at the sanctioned houses. They were illegal, dangerous, and desperate. Josephine's heart began to race, but she forced herself to stand straight. "I have nothing worth stealing." The leader, a gaunt vampire with scars crisscrossing his face, laughed. "You have blood, girl. That's worth everything to us." They moved faster than her eyes could follow. One moment they were 5 feet away. The next they had her surrounded. Scarred hands grabbed her arms, and she felt the sharp sting of fangs against her throat. But then the vampire holding her screamed. It was a sound of agony beyond anything Josephine had ever heard. A shriek that seemed to tear the night itself. The vampire released her and staggered backward, clutching his mouth. Where his fangs had broken her skin, smoke rose from his lips. His face began to blister and burn as if acid coursed through his veins. What are you?" he gasped, before his legs gave out and he collapsed to the cobblestones, convulsing. The other 2 rogues stared in horror. One took a step toward his fallen companion, then stopped, his eyes fixed on Josephine's throat, where a single drop of blood welled from the tiny puncture wound. "The blood," he whispered. It's impossible." Josephine touched her neck, her fingers coming away crimson. She didn't understand what was happening, why the vampire who had bitten her was writhing on the ground, his skin cracking like dried earth. A new voice cut through the chaos, commanding and cold. "Step away from her, now." The remaining 2 rogues spun around, and Josephine saw their faces drain of what little color they possessed. A figure stood at the mouth of the alley, tall and imposing, dressed in black that seemed to absorb the darkness around him. Power radiated from him in waves that made the air itself feel heavy. "Lord Edmund," one of the rogues breathed, dropping immediately to his knees. "We didn't know. We would never have—" "You would never have attacked a human woman in the street? Is that what you were about to claim?" Edmund moved forward, and though Josephine couldn't see his face clearly in the shadows, she felt the rage emanating from him like heat from a forge. "Or perhaps you would never have attacked this particular human, had you known what she was?" What she was. Josephine's mind spun. She was human. Just human. That's what Victor had thrown in her face, what the entire ballroom had laughed at her for being. Edmund knelt beside the fallen vampire, who had stopped convulsing and now lay still. He examined the corpse with clinical detachment, then looked up at Josephine. In the faint light from a distant street lamp, she caught her first clear glimpse of his face. He was devastatingly beautiful in the way only ancient vampires could be, with features that seemed carved from marble and eyes that held centuries of knowledge. "How long have you known?" he asked her. "Known what? I don't understand what's happening." Edmund rose to his full height, studying her with an intensity that made her want to look away. The two remaining rogues remained frozen, clearly terrified to move without permission. "Your blood killed him. A single drop on his tongue, and his body rejected it so violently that it burned him from the inside out." Edmund's expression was unreadable. "That only happens with one bloodline, the Sanguine Heirs." "That's a myth. A story parents tell children." "It is not a myth. The Sanguine Heirs were the first humans given immortality, the progenitors of our kind. Their blood was sacred, powerful beyond measure. When the transformation went wrong, when they chose to remain human rather than complete the change, their descendants carried that power in their veins." He gestured to the dead rogue. "Any vampire who feeds from a sanguine heir without their willing consent dies in agony. It's the blood's defense mechanism, a protection against forced turning." Josephine's legs felt weak. She leaned against the alley wall, trying to process his words. "But I'm nobody. I was a servant in Viktor Castellane's household until tonight when he rejected you publicly at the Blood Moon Gala. Yes, I heard." Edmund's eyes narrowed. "Victor is a fool." Something in his tone made her look up sharply. There was contempt there, but also something else, something that made her pulse quicken for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. Edmund turned to the two surviving rogues. "You will go to the council and confess your crimes. You will tell them you attempted to feed illegally and that your companion died in the attempt. You will not mention this woman or what you witnessed here. If you speak of this to anyone, I will hunt you down personally and make your friend's death look merciful by comparison. Do you understand?" "Yes, Lord Edmund. We swear it." "Go." They fled into the darkness, leaving Josephine alone with Edmund and the corpse of the rogue who had tried to feed from her. The rain continued to fall, washing the blood from the cobblestones. Edmund extended his hand toward her. "You cannot remain in the streets tonight. Come with me. We have much to discuss." Josephine stared at his offered hand. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, to run. She had trusted a vampire before, and it had led to humiliation and heartbreak. But what choice did she have? She was alone, unemployed, and apparently carrying blood that killed vampires. Victor's rejection had destroyed any chance of a normal life. She placed her hand in Edmund's. His skin was cold, but his grip was steady, grounding. He helped her to her feet with a gentleness that seemed at odds with the lethal power she had witnessed moments before. "Why are you helping me?" Edmund's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Because Viktor Castellane has proven himself unworthy of something infinitely precious. And I have spent 3 centuries learning to recognize value when I see it." He led her through the winding streets to a carriage bearing a crest she didn't recognize, a silver wolf entwined with a crescent moon. The interior was luxurious beyond anything she had experienced in Victor's household. Edmund sat across from her, maintaining a respectful distance. As the carriage rolled through the night, Edmund explained what she was with a patience that surprised her. The Sanguine Heirs had been 18 humans chosen by the first vampire, the progenitor of all their kind, to receive immortality as a gift. But the transformation required absolute willingness, complete surrender to the change. 17 had accepted. 1 had refused at the final moment, choosing to remain human even though the sacred blood had already been given. That one human had lived a normal, mortal life, but their descendants carried the blood's power forward. They were rare beyond measure, appearing perhaps once every few generations, and most lived their entire lives never knowing what flowed through their veins.
If others learn what you are, you will become the most valuable commodity in the immortal world. Your blood, given willingly, can cure vampire diseases that have no other treatment. Your consent to be turned would create a vampire of unprecedented power. And beyond all that,
Edmund paused, choosing his words carefully.
The Sanguine Heirs are sacred to our kind. They represent the choice, the free will that our progenitor valued above all else. To harm one deliberately brings the wrath of every old vampire in existence.
But that rogue harmed me. He died for it, but he did it.
Rogues are desperate, mad with hunger. They don't think clearly. But any vampire in their right mind, once they know what you are, would sooner cut off their own hand than harm you.
The carriage pulled through massive iron gates into an estate that made Victor's holdings look provincial. The mansion rose against the night sky like a Gothic cathedral, all spires and arched windows. Servants, both human and vampire, moved through the grounds with quiet efficiency. Edmund helped her from the carriage and led her inside. The entry hall featured a grand staircase that split in 2 directions, and portraits lined the walls showing stern-faced vampires from centuries past. Josephine felt desperately out of place in her wet, bedraggled servant's dress. A woman appeared at the top of the stairs, moving with the fluid grace of an ancient vampire. She was stunning, with platinum hair and eyes like chips of ice. Her gaze fixed on Josephine with immediate suspicion. "Edmund, what is this? You bring a human to our home at this hour."
"This is Josephine. She will be staying with us as my guest. Please have the blue suite prepared for her, and see that she has appropriate clothing and anything else she requires."
The woman's eyes narrowed. "A human guest? How unusual. Does this have anything to do with the spectacle at Victor's gala tonight? The entire city is talking about his public rejection of his human paramour." Josephine felt her cheeks burn with fresh humiliation. Edmund's expression hardened.
"That spectacle, as you call it, revealed Victor to be a short-sighted fool. And yes, Josephine is the woman he rejected. He threw away something he didn't have the wisdom to value."
The vampire woman descended the stairs, studying Josephine with new interest. "She must be exceptional indeed to warrant such defense from you. You've never shown interest in humans before."
"I show interest in what is valuable, Natasha. Now please, prepare the suite. Josephine has had a difficult evening."
Natasha's gaze lingered on Josephine for a moment longer, before she inclined her head and glided away. Edmund led Josephine up the stairs and through corridors lined with priceless art and ancient tapestries. The blue suite was more than she had ever dreamed of. A sitting room and bedroom decorated in shades of sapphire and silver, with a bathroom featuring a marble tub large enough to swim in. Edmund showed her where everything was with courtly formality. "Rest tonight. Tomorrow we will discuss what comes next. You are safe here. I give you my word. Josephine wanted to ask 1,000 questions, but exhaustion was catching up with her. She nodded mutely. Edmund moved toward the door, then paused. Victor was wrong about you. You are not nothing. You never were. He met her eyes, and something in his gaze made her breath catch. Sleep well, Josephine. After he left, she sank onto the bed, her mind reeling. In the span of a few hours, she had gone from publicly humiliated servant to honored guest of a vampire lord who claimed she carried sacred blood. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She chose to sleep. The next morning, Josephine woke to find an entire wardrobe of gowns waiting for her, far finer than anything she had owned in her life. She chose a simple day dress in deep green and found her way down to breakfast, following the sound of voices. The dining room held Edmund and 3 other vampires. They fell silent when she entered, all eyes turning toward her. Edmund stood immediately. Josephine, please, join us. He pulled out a chair next to his own at the head of the table. Allow me to introduce my inner circle. You met Natasha last night. This is Marcus, my head of security, and Lydia, who manages my business interests. The vampires nodded politely, but she could feel their curiosity like a physical weight. Marcus was a broad-shouldered vampire with military bearing, while Lydia was petite with sharp, intelligent eyes. A human servant brought food, and Josephine ate while the vampires discussed matters of estate management and city politics. She was content to listen, to observe, until Natasha spoke. Have you heard the rumors, Edmund? Victor is telling everyone that his human servant tried to use blood magic to ensnare him. He's claiming she's dangerous. Josephine's fork clattered against her plate. He's lying. I never... Of course he's lying, Edmund interrupted smoothly. Victor is embarrassed that he publicly courted you and then rejected you so cruelly. He's trying to save face by making you the villain in his story. His jaw tightened. It won't work. Marcus leaned forward. If he's spreading such rumors, it could make her a target. The council takes blood magic seriously. They might demand she be brought in for testing. The thought of vampire inquisitors tearing through her mind made Josephine's blood run cold. Edmund must have seen the fear in her face because he reached out and covered her hand with his own. No one will touch her. I'll make sure of that. Forgive me for asking, but why? Why protect me when you barely know me? Edmund's thumb traced a gentle circle on the back of her hand before he withdrew. I know enough. I know Victor is a fool who couldn't recognize value if it was presented to him on a silver platter. I know you carry yourself with dignity, despite being treated abominably. And I know, he paused, I know what you are, Josephine, even if you don't yet understand it fully yourself. Before she could question him further, a commotion erupted from the entrance hall. Raised voices, the sounds of a scuffle. Marcus was on his feet instantly, moving toward the door, but it burst open before he could reach it. Viktor Castellane strode into the dining room, flanked by 4 vampire guards, his face twisted with rage. His eyes locked on Josephine, and she saw murder in their depths. There you are, you scheming little witch. Did you think you could hide from the consequences of your crimes? Edmund rose from his seat with predatory grace. Victor, how kind of you to call, though I don't recall inviting you into my home. Your home? She's the one who should be explaining herself, not cowering behind you like a criminal. Victor pointed an accusing finger at Josephine. She used forbidden magic to cloud my judgment, to make me believe I cared for her. The council has agreed to test her, and I'm here to collect her. Josephine felt her world tilting. The council, testing. She would be broken, destroyed, all because Victor couldn't accept responsibility for his own choices. Edmund moved to stand between her and Victor, his posture radiating lethal intent. You will not lay a finger on her. Will I not? You may be powerful, Edmund, but even you cannot defy the council. They've issued a writ of examination. She must come with me. Show me this writ. Victor produced a scroll sealed with the council's mark. Edmund took it, broke the seal, and read quickly. His expression remained neutral, but Josephine saw his knuckles whiten as he gripped the parchment. This writ is valid. But it says nothing about you, Victor. It authorizes the council guard to bring Josephine in for questioning, not a personal vendetta disguised as official business. I'm merely assisting the official investigation. No. You're using council authority to pursue a personal grudge because you're ashamed that you publicly humiliated an innocent woman. Edmund's voice dropped to a tone that made the temperature in the room seem to plummet. But here's what you failed to consider in your rush for revenge. Josephine is under my protection now, and while the council has the right to question her, they don't have the right to brutalize her. I will accompany her to the council myself, and I will ensure she's treated with the respect she deserves. The respect she deserves? She's human, Edmund, a servant who got above her station. Edmund's hand shot out faster than Josephine could track, gripping Victor by the throat. Say one more word against her, and council writ or not, I will end you where you stand. The room erupted into chaos. Victor's guards moved forward, but Marcus and the other vampires blocked their path. For a moment, violence hung in the air like a blade waiting to fall. Then Josephine stood. Stop! Every vampire in the room turned to look at her. She was terrified, her heart racing, but she forced herself to meet Victor's eyes. I'll go to the council. I'll submit to their testing. I have nothing to hide because I've done nothing wrong. She looked at Edmund. But I would appreciate your escort, if the offer stands. Edmund released Victor, who stumbled backward, rubbing his throat. The offer stands. Always. 2 hours later, Josephine found herself in the council chambers, a circular room with tiered seating where 12 ancient vampires observed her with eyes that had witnessed centuries. Edmund stood beside her, his presence a comfort even though she knew he couldn't protect her from what was coming. The head of the council, a vampire so old his skin looked like parchment stretched over bone, spoke in a voice like dry leaves. Josephine, you stand accused of using blood magic to manipulate the affections of Lord Viktor Castellane. How do you answer this charge? I'm innocent, Council Elder. I'm human. I have no magic of any kind. Victor claims you bewitched him, made him care for you against his nature. Can you explain how a simple human servant could captivate a vampire lord? Josephine felt her cheeks burn, but she kept her voice level. I cannot explain Lord Victor's feelings or motivations. I can only tell you that I used no magic because I possess none. If he felt something for me, it was his choice. And if he regrets that choice now, that is also his burden to bear, not mine. Victor, seated among the observers, surged to his feet. She lies! I would never lower myself to caring for a human, unless compelled. The council elder raised one withered hand. "Silence, Victor. You will have your turn to speak." "But I said silence!" Victor sat, but his glare promised retribution. The elder turned back to Josephine. "The testing will determine truth. If you are innocent, you have nothing to fear. If you have used forbidden arts, the punishment is death." He nodded to two vampires who stepped forward, carrying a silver basin filled with clear liquid. "Place your hand in the sacred water. If you carry the taint of blood magic, the water will turn black. If you are innocent, it will remain clear." Josephine's hand trembled as she extended it toward the basin. Edmund's fingers brushed hers, a fleeting touch of reassurance, before she plunged her hand into the liquid. It was ice cold, so cold it burned. She gasped, but kept her hand submerged, watching the water with her heart in her throat. The seconds stretched into eternity. The water remained crystal clear. A collective murmur ran through the chamber. The elder leaned forward, studying the basin intently. "The sacred water accepts her. She carries no taint of forbidden magic." His ancient eyes fixed on Victor. "It appears, Lord Victor, that your accusations were false." "Test her again! The water must be wrong!" "Are you suggesting the sacred water, blessed by our progenitor and unchanged for 3,000 years, is somehow mistaken?" Victor's mouth opened and closed, but no words emerged. His face had gone pale with fury and shame. "Josephine is innocent of your charges. This council finds no evidence of blood magic or any other forbidden practice." The elder's gaze swept across the assembled vampires. "Let this serve as a reminder that accusations against the innocent carry consequences. Viktor Castellane, you will pay reparations to this woman for the harm your false allegations have caused." "Reparations? For a human? Would you like to face further sanctions for contempt of this council?" Victor's jaw clenched, but he bowed stiffly. "No, council elder." Josephine withdrew her hand from the basin, her fingers numb from the cold. Edmund wrapped his coat around her shoulders, his touch gentle. "Well done." But the council elder wasn't finished. He rose from his seat with effort, his ancient joints creaking. "Before this assembly concludes, I must ask, Josephine, may I examine your hand more closely?" Confused, she extended her still dripping hand toward him. He took it with surprising gentleness, studying her palm as if reading secrets written in her skin. His eyes widened almost imperceptibly. "Extraordinary. How did none of you see it?" He looked at Edmund. "You knew. That's why you protected her so fiercely." "Yes, elder." "See what? I don't understand." The elder turned her hand so the assembled vampires could see, though Josephine still didn't understand what he was showing them. "The lines on your palm, child. They form the mark of the Sanguine Heirs. It's faint, barely visible, but it's there. You carry the blood of the first chosen, the blood that our progenitor deemed sacred above all else." The chamber erupted into shocked whispers. Vampires stood from their seats, craning to see. Victor looked like he'd been struck by lightning. That's impossible. The sanguine line died out centuries ago." "Clearly not." The elder released Josephine's hand and addressed the full council. "By ancient law, this woman is entitled to protection, respect, and honor from all of vampire kind. Any who harm her face execution. Any who aid her earn the gratitude of this council and all who honor the old ways." He turned back to Josephine, and for the first time, she saw something like kindness in his ancient eyes. You are precious beyond measure, child. More valuable than gold, more sacred than any relic. Your blood, given willingly, can heal illnesses that would kill even us immortals. Your choice to turn or remain human is yours alone, and no vampire may pressure or coerce you in either direction. Josephine's mind reeled. This morning she had been a disgraced servant with nowhere to go. Now she was apparently some kind of vampire sacred relic. Victor stood abruptly. I didn't know. If I had known, I never would have what? Edmund's voice cut like a whip. Never would have treated her with contempt? Never would have publicly humiliated her? Never would have thrown her into the streets like garbage? He took a step toward Victor. You didn't reject her because she was human. You rejected her because you're a coward who cares more about the opinions of others than about genuine connection. The fact that she carries sacred blood doesn't change what you did. It only proves how profoundly you failed to see what was in front of you. The council elder nodded slowly. Edmund speaks truth. Victor, your actions brought shame to your house. That you later discovered the magnitude of your error does not excuse the cruelty of your initial choice. Josephine, I apologize. If you had known, you would have treated me like a possession, not a person, just like you're doing now. She straightened her spine, finding strength she didn't know she possessed. Your apology means nothing to me. You showed me who you truly are, and I'm grateful for the lesson, painful as it was. Victor's face flushed with humiliation, but he had no response. The council elder dismissed the assembly, and vampires filed out, many casting curious glances at Josephine as they passed. When the chamber had emptied except for Edmund and Josephine, she finally allowed herself to breathe. Her legs felt weak, and she sank onto one of the stone benches. Edmund sat beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. I don't know what to do now. Everything's changed. Everything was always this way. You simply didn't know it yet. Those vampires in the chamber, they were looking at me like I was some kind of prize. Like Victor did, but worse. Edmund's expression darkened. They see what you can give them. Healing, power, prestige from being associated with a sanguine heir. But here's what you need to understand, Josephine. He shifted to face her fully. Your value doesn't come from your blood. It comes from who you are. Victor was a fool, not because he rejected a sanguine heir, but because he rejected you. Do you understand the difference? Tears pricked at her eyes. No one had ever spoken to her like that, as if her worth was inherent rather than derived from what she could offer. Why are you being so kind to me? Edmund was quiet for a long moment. I've lived for 3 centuries, Josephine. I've seen empires rise and fall, watched countless humans and vampires pass through this world. And in all that time, I've rarely encountered anyone with your strength, your dignity in the face of cruelty. He paused. When I heard about Victor's spectacle at the gala, I was disgusted. When I saw you in that alley, defending yourself even when terrified, I was captivated. You were at the gala? I arrived as you were being escorted out. I followed to make sure you were safe. That's how I found you when those rogues attacked. You've been protecting me from the start. And I will continue to protect you, if you'll allow it. She met his eyes, seeing genuine care there, something Victor had never truly offered. I don't know if I'm ready to trust another vampire. Not after. I'm not asking you to trust me. Not yet. I'm asking you to let me prove myself worthy of your trust. Take all the time you need. Over the following weeks, Edmund kept his word. He protected Josephine from the vampires who came seeking her favor, who offered everything from wealth to immortality in exchange for a single drop of her blood. He provided her with rooms in his estate, teachers to help her understand the history of the Sanguine Heirs, and most importantly, the freedom to make her own choices. And slowly, carefully, Josephine began to trust him. She learned that Edmund was nothing like Victor. Where Victor had been charming but ultimately selfish, Edmund was steady, thoughtful, genuinely interested in her thoughts and feelings. He asked her opinions on matters of estate management, included her in decisions about his household, treated her as an equal rather than a possession. She learned that he played the piano beautifully, that he had a dry sense of humor that made her laugh unexpectedly, that he treated his human servants with respect and fairness. She learned that beneath his formal exterior was a man who carried the weight of centuries with grace, but also loneliness. One evening, 2 months after the council hearing, Josephine found Edmund in his study poring over reports. He looked up when she entered, and his entire expression softened. "Josephine, I didn't expect you still awake." "I couldn't sleep. I was thinking about something the council elder said." She moved closer to his desk. "He said my blood could heal vampire illnesses. Is there anything you need healing from?" Edmund set down his papers. "What makes you ask?" "Because you've done so much for me. Protected me, given me a home, asked for nothing in return. I want to do something for you." "Josephine, you don't owe me anything." "I know. This isn't about debt. This is about choice. You said my blood given willingly is powerful. I'm willing, Edmund. If you need it, it's yours." Something flickered in his eyes, an emotion so intense it made her breath catch. "Do you understand what you're offering? Willingly given blood creates a bond. Not a binding like forced turning, but a connection. I would always know where you are, how you feel, and you would sense me as well." "I understand. If you do this, other vampires will know you've bonded with me. They'll see it as claiming you. You might face complications." "Let them see it however they want. I'm choosing this, Edmund. I'm choosing you." He stood slowly, moving around the desk to stand before her. "I need you to be absolutely certain, because once I accept this gift, I will never let anyone harm you. I will fight for you, protect you, stand between you and anything that threatens you. Not because your blood is sacred, but because you are precious to me. Do you understand what I'm saying?" Josephine's heart hammered in her chest, but it wasn't from fear. "I understand, and I'm certain." Edmund's hand cupped her face with infinite tenderness. "Then I accept your gift, Josephine. Not the blood, but the trust that comes with it. That's the true treasure." He produced a small ceremonial knife, the kind used for blood oaths. The cut he made on her palm was small, precise, barely a sting. Then he made a matching cut on his own palm and pressed them together. Josephine felt it immediately, a rush of sensation like lightning through her veins. Images, feelings, centuries of memories flashed through her mind too quickly to grasp, but the overall impression was overwhelming. loneliness, duty, honor, and underneath it all, a desperate yearning for connection that mirrored her own. And then, rising above everything else, a feeling so powerful it drove the air from her lungs. Love. He loved her. Not for her sacred blood, not for what she could give him, but for who she was. The bond settled into place like a puzzle piece finding its home. She could feel him now, his presence in her mind like a warm fire on a cold night, comforting and steady. Josephine, can you feel? Yes, I feel you. Edmund, He pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she were infinitely precious. I've waited 3 centuries to feel this. To find someone who sees me as more than a powerful vampire lord, who values me for who I am rather than what I can provide. His voice dropped to a whisper. You are everything I never knew I needed. She wrapped her arms around him, feeling safe for the first time since Victor's betrayal. I was so broken after what he did. I thought I'd never be able to trust again. Victor was a fool who threw away something irreplaceable. But his loss is my gain, and I will spend eternity grateful for his stupidity. He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. I love you, Josephine. Not because you're a sanguine heir, though that blood runs in your veins. I love you because you're brave and kind, and see the world with eyes that haven't been jaded by centuries. I love you because you make me want to be better, to deserve the gift of your trust. I love you too. I think I've loved you since that night in the alley, when you stood between me and danger without knowing anything about me, except that I needed help. Edmund kissed her then, gentle and reverent, as if she were made of starlight. The bond between them sang with joy, 2 souls recognizing they'd found their match. When they finally broke apart, Edmund rested his forehead against hers. There's something I need to ask you, and I want you to know you can refuse without consequence. What is it? Marry me. Not because of ancient bloodlines or sacred bonds, but because I cannot imagine eternity without you by my side. Be my wife, my partner, my equal in all things. He paused. And if you want, years from now, when you're ready, I would be honored to turn you so we can spend that eternity together. But that choice is yours and yours alone. I will love you whether you remain human or choose immortality. Josephine's heart felt so full she thought it might burst. Yes, yes to marrying you, and maybe yes to the rest, someday, when I'm ready. That's all I could ever ask for. The wedding was a grand affair, attended by vampires from across the realm and humans from the city. Victor was not invited, though rumor said he spent the evening drinking himself into a stupor in his estate, raging about the treasure he'd thrown away. Josephine wore a gown of white silk embroidered with silver thread, and Edmund looked devastating in formal black. When the officiant asked if they accepted the eternal bond, both answered with voices that rang clear and certain. I claim Josephine as mine, now and forever, in this life and whatever comes after. I will protect her, honor her, and love her until the stars fall from the sky. I claim Edmund as mine, freely and willingly. I give him my trust, my love, and my future. We face eternity together. The bond between them flared bright enough that those with the sight to see such things gasped in wonder. It was said later that the strength of their connection was visible as light in the air around them, a sign of true devotion rare even among vampires who lived for centuries. Years passed. Josephine worked alongside Edmund to improve conditions for humans in vampire territories, using her unique position to advocate for those without voice or power. She became known throughout the realm not just as the Sanguine Heir, but as the Blood Queen who ruled with wisdom and compassion. When she finally chose to turn on her 30th birthday, she did so knowing it was her choice and hers alone. Edmund performed the ritual with hands that shook with love and fear, terrified of hurting her, grateful beyond measure that she trusted him with something so profound. The transformation was agony, but Edmund never left her side, holding her through the pain, whispering words of love and encouragement. When she emerged 3 days later, vampire, yet still herself, he wept with relief. "You're even more beautiful than before," though I didn't think that was possible. Josephine discovered that turning had intensified their bond rather than diminished it. She could feel him, always, a presence in her heart that brought comfort and strength. And he could feel her, his eternal companion, his chosen mate. They ruled Edmund's territories together, 2 souls perfectly matched. Children came eventually, 3 born through a process ancient vampires remembered but rarely used, a magic that allowed vampire mates to create life from their bond. 2 daughters and a son, each carrying both Josephine's sacred blood and Edmund's ancient power. Victor lived another century before dying in a duel over a gambling debt. Josephine felt nothing when she heard the news. He was part of a past life, a painful lesson that had led her to something infinitely better. On their 100th anniversary, Edmund and Josephine stood together on the balcony of their estate, watching the blood moon rise over their lands. Their children played in the gardens below, their laughter carrying on the night air. "Do you ever regret it? Choosing this life, choosing me?" Josephine leaned into his embrace, feeling the bond between them pulse with love and certainty. "Never. Victor rejected me for being human, but that rejection led me to you. He saw my humanity as weakness. You saw it as strength. His rejection was the greatest gift he ever gave either of us. It set you free to find your true mate." She turned in his arms, looking up at the vampire she had chosen, and who had chosen her in return. "My blood may have made immortals kneel, but you're the one who saw my heart. That's why I'm yours, Edmund. Not because of ancient bloodlines or sacred bonds, but because you loved me when I was nothing, and that made me everything." He kissed her as the blood moon reached its zenith, bathing them in crimson light. 2 souls perfectly matched, bound by choice and love, and a connection that would last through eternity. Victor had rejected her for being human, but in doing so, he had lost a treasure beyond price. And Edmund, who had seen her worth from the beginning, had gained everything. In the gardens below, their children laughed and played, living proof that true love transcends the boundaries between mortal and immortal. Josephine had been rejected, humiliated, thrown away, but from those ashes she had risen as a queen, a mother, a beloved wife, and most importantly, as herself. Her blood had made immortals kneel, but her strength, her dignity, and her capacity for love had won her a kingdom and a future beyond her wildest dreams. And every time she looked at Edmund, at their children, at the life they had built together, she thanked whatever force had brought them together. Victor's rejection had been meant to destroy her. Instead, it had led her home.